Hi, this is Kerry Artak with Wicked Stocks, bringing you updates in the Mag 7, my weekly update series. This is for the week of Monday, September 29th, 2025. In case you're not familiar with the Mag 7, they refer to a group of 7 high-performance technology companies that have, contributed significantly to market growth, particularly the last few years, and they include Alphabet, which you see here, a weekly chart. By the way, these will be weekly charts throughout. This one going back some 5, 6, 7 years. But we've got Google, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla. And this is obviously Alphabet, or the old Google. And these are just updates. I've been showing this now, I don't know, for 6 or 8 weeks perhaps. And we'll continue to do these on a week-by-week basis. So we did push through and close above about a month ago this 223.14 rising channel top. And it was really the last significant channel structure. If you go back in time, I mean, I could go back, you could see, for instance, that we pushed through this one and so forth and so on. So it is the last structure. Having closed above it a month ago, we've been indicating a 264.24 to 73.57. You can do the A-B counts here. We show the simple math, but they line up in the same region. 264 to 273 can contain buying on a quarterly, possibly annual basis. And we've considered this kind of a 2 to 3 month target since the settlement above 223.14 about a month ago. There is the gap fill that occurred last week when we broke below the previous week's low of 244.66 and slipped through the high from 3 weeks ago of 242.25. 244.66 is the more meaningful now. It is the low of the high. And, were we to close below it, I would expect 223.14 within, in fact, I'm going to erase this just for clarity. If we close below the low of the high this week, 223.14 is likely. This could be by the end of October, where we could bottom out through the rest of the year into the first quarter and round up within several months into the 264, 273 region. Let me move on to the next chart. I actually kind of forget what we show here. Okay, this shows 223.14 as represented by a horizontal line, and you can see this channel top once again. So 223.14, if we were to close below it, then we have another 3 to 5 week sell signal. I don't expect 199.48 unless we close below that 223.14 channel top. This area well suited to contain selling also on a monthly, possibly quarterly basis. So, there's a couple scenarios here. The high of the low is 244.66. The all-time high was put out 2 weeks ago. Just continuing south and closing below it this week would be a sell signal down to 223.14. If we put out a new high and close below 244.66, that is also significant, and that would be more of a more significant reversal. Let's move on to the next chart. I'm going to kind of make quick work of these. 237.68, an area that we tested about 3 weeks ago. That is the high settlement price that was put out in January. The high itself is 242.52. This forms a range I've been mentioning that can contain monthly buying pressures, and once tested, as we did 3 weeks ago, we can ease back to meaningful support that we have presently lined up in this 213.95 to 241.51 region. Sorry, this should be 214.51. Let me change that right now. So while I can do that, there we are. 214.51 down to 213.95. This is a base of what I would call near to midterm support. You got a convergence of 2 important channel structures. Certainly if we were to close below them, that would be a significant sell signal into October, November. But for right now, you can bottom pick this, anticipating now a 3 to 5 week rally from here back into, once again, this 237.68 to 242.58 region. I've been mentioning how we're kind of in a two-sided near to midterm framework between the upper 230s, low 240s, and presently what we find in the lower 210s and climbing, called the mid 210s. And so this is kind of a 3 to 5 week swing trader's paradise, if you will, as far as Amazon is presenting right now. Now, if we do close the week below 213.95, once again, I see a good high through the rest of the year, and I would expect at least 191.36. And this is an area where we could hesitate on a prolonged downdraft. So 191.36 is also similar to the high of the low of 192.65. 191.36 is a 5/8 downside Fibonacci from the April low against that recent September high. It can contain selling on a monthly basis. We might even round up from here into the 210s again within several months. But closing below 191.36 would set off a secondary sell signal that would indicate 158.42 within another 2 to 3 months. I've been mentioning how closing below 213.95 may well yield this lower 158.42 within about 3 to 5 months, and I think you can play that. But if you're more in a stair-step fashion, the more reliable approach would be anticipating the lower 190s and then the upper 150s if we close below 213.95. Now to the upside, we're not going to see it this week, but if we do close above 242.52 in the coming weeks, that sets up a 2 to 3 month buy signal to this very significant 265.58 3-year channel top, where we could top out well into a 26.
If you're finding value in this analysis, it's only a glimpse of what we offer. Your real trading edge starts at wickedstocks.com. Each week, premium members receive 2 high-probability stock picks. Each one comes with a complete trade plan, including exact entry, profit target, stop loss, and regular updates so you can manage the trade with confidence. You'll also get daily video analysis in the top traded markets, the SPY, the Triple Q, and Nvidia, highlighting the key price levels, trends, and trade setups we're focused on. Whether you're day trading or swing trading, these insights help you zero in on the highest quality opportunities with clarity. Try it all free for 5 days. Cancel at any time.
Let's move on to Meta. Meta had a sell signal near term last week, closing below this channel bottom at 774.11, and now anticipating this range of support. We could see that this week. Within 2 or 3 weeks, I'd say at the longest, 717.37, a descending channel bottom, and 691.96 is a longer-term rising channel bottom. This area all converges over the next 2 weeks. It is a range right now that may well contain selling through the rest of the year, and from here we can round up to 841.11 within 2 to 3 months of testing the 691.96 to 717.37 area. Now, once we test this range, and I'm assuming we will, 691.96, 717.37, we will no longer really use that. I'm going to use this for illustration purposes only. We'll no longer use that 774. It would really be, if this channel bottom holds at 717.37, the trend line becomes a channel top that is even more significant and offers us our upward pivot point into November if settled above. But we're a long way from that right now. Presently, I think you can buy 691.96 to 717.37 through the rest of the year. And from here, we can round up by the end of the year to this significant 841.11 channel top, a 3-year structure that can contain buying through the first quarter of next year, and if settled above, would be a significant buy signal into later next year. Let's continue on with the Meta chart and just show that if we were over the next 3 to 5 weeks to close below this rising channel bottom at 691.69, good high through the rest of the year and over the next 3 to 5 months or sooner, and that sooner has happened before, we should then see 528.75. So if we close below 691.69, I see no good reason to stay long Meta as we move through the rest of the year. You want to be short if you can. That might mean reaching for 530, 540, strike out of the money puts that don't expire. I would go at least 6 months out on that expiration date, given the 3 to 5 month possibility it would take to reach that lower area. On to Microsoft. Microsoft kind of dilly-dallying, if you will, in this area. We have the low of the high that was put out back in July, and then we have the high of the low that was about a month ago. They are both in the same vicinity, 509.43 to 511.97. And having closed above it 2 weeks ago, I've been anticipating a return to the 537.45 inside channel, which is still a relevant resistance area because we only spiked through it. We never closed above it. When we spiked through it, we tested its sister formation, the more significant 563.34. And really what I've been saying here with Microsoft is, having tested this 4-year channel top at 563.34, you must allow for the possibility, not expecting it, but must allow in your calculations for the channel support at 371.37 over the following. This was a 1-year sell-off. Are we going to see a 1-year bear market? I'm not expecting that, but I am saying that 371.37 is a bit of a magnet when you're at these lofty levels. And so what I would do is I would break this down into a stair-step approach. I do think that if we close this week back below 509.43, you must skew ever so slightly to the downside as we continue into October, November. The 468.35 high that was put out back in July in reach within 2 to 3 months, where yes, we could bottom out through the rest of the year into the first quarter. If we were to close below 468.35, then I would indeed anticipate within 3 to 5 months or less this 371.37 long-term channel bottom, where we actually could bottom out through all of 26. Upside, where we are right now, I think you can continue anticipating the possibility of 537.45. We're kind of in a neutral state right now, but unless we close below 509.43, I think you can anticipate the upper 530s maybe by the end of October, over the next couple of months, where we could actually top out. This is still a relevant resistance on a monthly basis and fall away. If we close above 537.45, we've got a 3 to 5 week or sooner rally back to significant resistance at 563.34. On to Apple. I cover Apple every week in the paid subscription side of wickedstocks.com. So this is just basic broad brushstroke stuff. It was the settlement above this longer term channel bottom. That goes back to April this is like a year and a half. We did this a few weeks ago that then indicated a return to not only 260.10, which was that December high, but on to the channel top once again at 277.75, which held back in December, and we collapsed into the 190s. There's a 5-year channel structure that's been holding now significantly for a long time, and holding above 239.35. We expect this by the end of the year. 277.75 may well contain buying through all of the first quarter and possibly into later 26. If we close back below 239.35, that could throw this market right back on the defensive as we move into later year. The 194.74 wouldn't surprise me by the end of the year, but there are other levels, for instance, the mid 220s, this consolidation area, the base of which I think closing below 225.95 would be the clear anticipation of 194.74 within 2 to 3 months. We do provide other line studies that are more accurate than this in our page side. If you're interested in weekly Apple stock analysis, we have an 8-minute video that covers this in great detail, and I'll just leave it at that. On to Nvidia. Now, Nvidia, let's see here. On the daily chart, if you're following our daily Nvidia series, which is free on YouTube, you probably know this already. We closed above a descending channel top on the daily chart a week ago that this week is at 172.65. Above 172.65, we are expecting ultimate upward continuation over the next 2 to 3 months to 219.64. That is a full A, B, C count, or A minus B plus A takes you to 219.64. Now, of course, you've got this longer term former, I call it former 2.5-year channel top. Former because we closed above it and then back below it. It's been pretty sloppy trade. It was here anyway as we were trading July, August. About 183.10, we're bullish anyway above 172.65, as you may be well aware. If we can close this week above 183.10, that would be a new high settlement price on the weekly chart, and I think we're then clearly 2 to 3 months away from reaching 219.64. On the other hand, closing below 172.65 certainly dampens bullish expectations, and that's an understatement. But in terms of anticipating a clear reversal and shift into and anticipating 148.83, this 1-year channel top, that would come into play if we were to then also close below 164.15. Now, we cover all of this every day in our daily NVIDIA report, and I would just urge you to watch that. The closing below 164.15, we're just 3 to 5 weeks away from testing long-term support at 148.71, where we could bottom out through the rest of the year and even through the first quarter of next. Tesla threw off a big buy signal 3 weeks ago above this 2.5-year channel top at 361.85, ultimately anticipating 524.11 as a 5 to 8 month objective. That 5 to 8 month objective could narrow to within 3 to 5 weeks if we close this week above 461.73. Now, 461.73 is kind of a near-term pivot point inside of this wide zone. expecting 524.11 over the longer haul. But over the midterm, we could top out at 461.73 and perhaps fall back into the 360s within a month or two of doing so. Closing above 461.73, I think 3 to 5 weeks with present volatility, the 524.11 5-year channel top in reach, where we could top out through the first quarter of next year, possibly well into 26. Holding below 461.73 will keep this channel bottom and 361.85 in reach over the next few months. This is rising, this newly formed channel bottom, and will converge with the 360s anyway as we get toward Thanksgiving into later November. This is going to be an important zone of long-term support. If tested, can absorb selling through the first quarter, and from here we can round up to 5. This is not updated, it's 524 and change within 5 to 8 months. I will mention that if we close this week on the weekly chart below 419.08, last week's low, which is the move high week, that is in itself a pivot point to the downside. And I would begin to skew toward anticipating a test of 361.85, which is that 2.5-year channel top I show here once again. And combining that obviously with this newly formed rising, this is a base of support that could contain selling through the first quarter if tested. And I would anticipate its possibility if we were to close this week below 419.08. And the last thing I'm going to show you is the S&P 500 as represented by the SPY. The SPY is the ETF. We cover this every day at wickedstocks.com. It tested a 5-year channel top that we've been anticipating since the buy signal 3 months ago when we closed above that February high. This is a big deal for the broader market. I don't know to what extent it might impact Tesla, which seems to have a mind of its own, but I think it'll impact the broader market. Nvidia is a part of the S&P 500. We can fall away from here and fall all the way back to the February high in the next few months, and possibly even lower as we continue into later year. And inversely, if we can close above this channel top at the end of any week, we launch into a long-term buy signal for the broader market that should continue into the first quarter of next year. I don't provide this exact number because it's not fair to our wickedstocks.com subscribers, so I invite you to go to wickedstocks.com, take advantage of our 5-day free trial, and you'll have access to this precise information as we move through the week. 16 minutes, my goodness. I am going to leave it at that for this particular update from wickedstocks.com on the Mag 7, and you have a great week. Good trading.